Hello, and welcome to a beginner's guide to roller coasters. If you haven't already seen part 2, the link is in the description. Today, we will be learning about the moments on roller coasters known as elements. An element on a roller coaster is a specific point on the ride's track that is meant to be a specific moment on a roller coaster. Every roller coaster has at least one element, whether it's the propulsion system that brings the coaster to its highest point, a part where the ride has a steep drop, or when the ride goes upside down. There are three main types of elements that are typically on roller coasters: a propulsion system, an inversion, and an airtime moment. Let's start with the propulsion systems. These are typically found on the start of a coaster, and they are used to generate power on a certain section of track, propelling the ride vehicle to its maximum height. Let's start with the most common propulsion system, the chain lift hill. A chain lift hill is used to pull the ride vehicle slowly up to the maximum height, and is the most common version of a lift hill. The way a chain lift hill works is by a chain being connected to the middle of the track, being powered by a motor underneath the lift hill. But what about the second version of the lift hill, known as the cable lift hill? A cable lift hill is very similar to the chain lift hill. However, instead of using a chain to pull the train to the top of the track, it literally uses a cable system, reaching the maximum heights slightly faster than a regular chain lift hill. The third type of propulsion system is a launch track. A launch is very different than that of a cable or chain lift hill. Instead of travelling slowly up an incline to the highest point of a coaster, a launch is usually a flat section of track that accelerates the train to a high speed in a matter of seconds. There are three types of launchers. There are hydraulic launchers, LSM launchers, and compressed air launchers. Let's start with the hydraulic launch. A hydraulic launch utilizes a cable that attaches to a hook on the bottom of a ride vehicle. The cable is connected to a wire which extends all the way to underneath the end of the launch track. Underneath the end of the launch track is what powers the launch, known as the hydraulic winch. The winch spins very fast, pulling the cable along the track at the maximum speed, and then for the rest of the layout, gravity does all the work for the ride vehicle. There are two manufacturers that use hydraulic launchers: Intamin for their hydraulic launch coasters, and Cobra for their booster bike coasters. Cobra still sell and construct booster bike coasters to this day, with their latest installation being Tron Light Cycle Run at Magic Kingdom. Sadly, Intamin discontinued their hydraulic launch coasters a long time ago. The last time they used the hydraulic launch on a coaster was with Formula Rossa at Ferrari World in the United Arab Emirates in 2010. They discontinued the hydraulic launch in favour of a cheaper and more efficient launch system, which brings me to the next type of launch, the LSM launch. LSM is an acronym for Linear Synchronous Motors. An LSM launch is a different type of launch system than that of the hydraulic launch. Instead of using a winch to pull a cable along the launch straight, an LSM launch uses magnetic fins that are placed along the launch track to power the coaster train up to its maximum speed. Finally, there's the compressed air launch. A compressed air launch is probably one of the rarest launch systems on the roller coaster industry. A compressed air launch works by air being compressed within the launch track. After a certain amount of time, the air is released, and the forces accelerate the ride vehicle to its maximum speed. The first compressed air launch was found on Hypersonic XLC, which opened at King's Dominion in 2001. Let's move on from propulsion systems and talk more about gravity-reliant elements. This is an inversion, and that's an inversion, and this is also an inversion. An inversion is when roller coaster track changes direction to the point where it is upside down, inverting the ride vehicles for a split second at a time. The first ever inverting roller coaster was Corkscrew, which opened at Knott's Berry Farm in 1975. The reason the ride was called Corkscrew was because the two inversions on the ride were literally what are known as a corkscrew. A corkscrew is one of the most common types of inversions in the world, but the most common types of inversion is almost certainly the iconic vertical loop. A vertical loop, otherwise known by many as a loop-de-loop or simply a loop, is an inversion where the track travels vertically to the point where it is upside down and then travels back down to the ground. A vertical loop is not actually completely circular, but is more of an upside down teardrop shape. The reason for this is because if the loop was completely circular, it would generate too many G-forces on its riders, resulting in a painful and uncomfortable moment on the ride. But what about the Cobra Roll? A Cobra Roll is an inversion that is made up of half vertical loop, 2 half corkscrews and another half vertical loop, in that order, meaning a Cobra Roll technically counts as 2 inversions. The reason it's called a Cobra Roll is due to its shape of the element resembling that of a cobra's head. There's also the barrel roll. A barrel roll is where the track twists 360 degrees to the point where it flips upside down and right side up again. Unlike most other inversions which travel vertically, the barrel roll travels sideways. This type of sideways inversion can also be found on a 0G roll, where it travels upwards, similar to an airtime hill. There are many types of inversions out there, including the banana roll, which is similar to a Cobra Roll but from a certain angle looks like a banana, and also the Immelman, which consists of a half vertical loop and then the track twists 180 degrees, flipping the ride vehicle right side up again. There are so many types of inversions out there, too many to speak about in this video, so I'm going to move on to the next type of elements, airtime moments. Airtime moments are moments on a roller coaster where the track travels to a certain height and then drops back down to the ground, and they don't invert. Let's start with a classic airtime hill. An airtime hill is exactly what it sounds like, a section of the ride shaped like a hill that is made to generate airtime. How about a more complex airtime moment known as an outer banked airtime hill? This version of an airtime hill, instead of the track's banking being completely flat, it banks at a certain angle, flipping the train sideways. But there's also this element known as a top hat. A top hat is similar to a normal airtime hill, but it can reach a maximum vertical angle of 90 degrees, and are usually found on launched roller coasters. It gets its name from its appearance, which resembles an actual top hat. Let's move on to a much rarer airtime moment known as a high five. A high five can only be found on dueling roller coasters, because the element consists of 2 outer bank airtime hills, with both hills banking so that they are facing each other. This allows the ride vehicles to come close to each other, to the point where riders can literally high five each other on both trains, hence the name high five. How about the speed hill, a very small version of a normal airtime hill that's usually placed in moments when a train is travelling at its fastest speeds. Finally, for airtime moments, there's the double up and double down airtime hills. The double up consists of the track going through an airtime hill, but without a drop, and then the train travelling upwards a second time, reaching its peak and then travelling back down. The same applies for the double down, but the other way around. There are literally hundreds of elements out there, including the helix, which is a near flat spiral that travels either up or down, interlocking corkscrews, which are 2 corkscrews intertwined with themselves, and the pretzel loop, an inversion that is designed to look like a pretzel. More elements can be found on Roller Coaster Database. But now is for the part of the video where I ask you the inverted question, to test how much you have learned from this video. The question is, if speed hills are placed in one of the fastest moments on a coaster, what type of airtime is generated? If you guessed ejector airtime, then you are correct. That is it for this episode of A Beginner's Guide to Roller Coasters. In the next episode, I will talk about the various roller coaster models out there and what their purposes are. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.